But this is a practice for most people to go, come on, come in. It's safe enough here to feel what's going on. And it's nice to feel what's going on. And then we can get some magical feedback from our bodies that we actually learn to listen to. So we get told all the time, listen to your body, listen to its messages. And most people are like, what? What does that even mean? And this is actually where we can start to do this, because when we are fully experiencing that moment of eating and how it feels, we then can get a sense sometimes of, maybe that's enough now, or maybe we need something more, or, oh, this feels really nourishing, this is lovely, or I'm not feeling this right now. And it's no like big conversations and voices in your head. It's as simple as when you might go to eat a salad on a really cold day and your body's instinctively going, and your head's going, oh, but it's salad, it's really good. But your body's going, I'm a bit cold, a bit cold for salad. It's that kind of sense, that kind of intuitive feeling. And the more we practice being kind of really conscious of what's going on as we're eating, the more we'll hear those kinds of messages.
Hello and welcome to the Metabolic Balance Stories podcast. This is where we share real stories and insights to help you on your journey to optimal health with personalized nutrition and metabolic balance. I'm Cherry Wills, I'm your host, and today I'm delighted to welcome Kirsten Chick. Kirsten is a nutritional therapist and an educator of 20 years experience in the field. She's the author of Nutrition Brought to Life and has dedicated her career to making nutritional science accessible and actionable for everyday people. So I had the pleasure of being a guest on the ICANN podcast with Kirsten interviewing me earlier this year. So it's really wonderful to be catching up with her again and having her share her insights with me for all of you to hear. So as both a writer and a speaker on nutrition topics, Kirsten has a wealth of practical knowledge that really aligns beautifully with the metabolic balance approach. And so it's just really lovely for me to say a big welcome to Kirsten.
It's very lovely to be here, and thank you for inviting me back. And yes, this whole kind of reverse interview. It's lovely.
I know, it's wonderful because I want to pick your brains. I know that you have got so much insight, so I want to pick your brains. So you have a very lovely way of wanting to make nutrition truly accessible to everyday people. I think that's what I've really got an understanding from your work. And so mindful eating is part of that, isn't it? So let's start with mindful eating. What do you see as mindful eating?
Well, most people come across mindful eating as an exercise in a mindfulness course or class they might have done, when perhaps they put a raisin in their mouth and sit with it and experience it and use that to bring the attention to the main senses in the body. And when we use our senses, so our touch, taste, feeling, that's touch, taste, smell, sight, hearing. When we use those senses, we are bringing our attention to the here and now and our current bodies. We're settling into our bodies. And that's what we do when we do mindful breathing or mindful walking as well. So mindfulness meditation, we normally focus on the breath and the sensation of the breath coming through the nostrils into the lungs and out again. And that's something that might be a longer mindfulness practice. I've taken some of that because I've seen how powerful it can be to use mindful eating every time we eat. Not for the whole meal, that would just be too much for most people and really antisocial, actually.
Yeah.
But actually, there's a lot of power in having some mindfulness at the start and maybe a few mouthfuls here and there, eaten really mindfully. benefits that I'm sure I'll go into a lot more, but around calming the nervous system and kind of interweaving moments of mindfulness through the day. So you're not just associating that mindful, that calm, centered, grounded state with the mat or the chair that you usually meditate in, and you can't really access it anywhere else. If you interweave those mindful moments through the day, then you're much more likely, I believe, to be able to access them when you really need that state in a situation where you have a threat or a stress. Um, you're much more likely to be able to access that if you're used to interweaving mindfulness into different situations during the day. And it continually helps you bring you back to that state during the day where you're feeling centered and grounded and calm. And also, it can have lots of benefits for your digestive processes, which are just amazing, really. So for me, it's a no-brainer for those who can practice mindfulness. And just to cover it before we begin, there will be not everybody, but some people with PTSD who just can't do this, and some people with some eating disorders who just can't do this. The focus on the food in that way will be detrimental rather than helpful. But for the vast majority of people, I think this can be really quite powerful and shifting.
So really, well, and you're absolutely right about the PTSD and the eating disorders. I'm really glad you mentioned that. But what we're really saying here that it's not just sort of paying attention to what you're eating or making sure. It's actually really having a very intentional eating experience in some ways, and noticing everything that's going on in your mouth, and how it's making, how you're feeling, really connecting in.
Yeah, absolutely. And with a real sense, if it's possible, of playful curiosity. Because we have so much stress around our foods and judgments around our foods. Should I be eating this? Oh, this is, I shouldn't be eating this. Oh, I feel terrible about eating this. Or what should I feel about eating this? This is, I should feel great about eating this, even though it might not be the right thing at that right time for you. So our heads get in the way, our judgments and our self-blame and our conditioning gets in the way. Whereas if we can just take that energy out and think, just that playful curiosity of how does this actually feel? What does this actually taste like? What does this actually feel like? But even before then, actually, when we are about to eat, it's that moment of I often try to get people to try and imagine a bubble of calm around them. Because often when we sit down to eat, or maybe we don't even sit down to eat, there's chaos around us. It might be the kids, it might be the workplace, it might be that we're having to eat in a busy environment in a cafe, restaurant, on the bus, whatever. It might, there might be lots going on. So we have to create that bubble of calm. And our imaginations are a powerful thing. So then the more we practice this, the easier it gets. So creating that bubble of calm, imagining we're in this really lovely space, feeling our feet on the floor, bum on the chair, really settling into that space. And then just looking at what we're about to eat and thinking about it. And most of us nutritionists get taught about the cephalic phase of digestion, so CEPHALIC, cephalic phase, which is to do with the brain and it's to do with the nervous system. And it means that when we think about food, we trigger our digestion. That's why we start to salivate when we think about foods that we want to eat. That's our brain going, oh, she's thinking about food. Maybe she's about to eat something. Let's get the saliva going. Let's get the enzymes going. And that in itself will trigger processes further down the digestive tract. And that's really important because stress does the opposite. Stress, threats, any of those kind of feelings switches off digestion so that our resources aren't wasted digesting food. We can put all of our resources towards dealing with whatever the threat is. So we have to really assume that we're going through our day mostly with our digestion switched off. And it's really good practice to actively switch it on every time we eat. So that's kind of where we start. And that's kind of where we start the process of mindfulness, whether it's mindful eating or mindful walking or mindful meditation, is by, okay, let's get into this space. So that's it. And then we get on to the curiosity about how the food feels in our mouth, how it tastes, our relationship with it.
I think it's fascinating to really slow down and actually properly pay attention in the entire experience of eating. I mean, we know a lot of, like, I'm immediately always thinking, these top flight restaurants that spend, where you can spend an absolute fortune, the gastronomic feast, where they do control the lighting and the everything, every aspect of the mouthfeel of the food and the smells that you encounter when you walk in. So it does really say that we, as human beings, all of our senses are truly aligned with our physiology, and then how it's going to, so how our digestion will actually unfold for that particular meal too.
Yeah, all of that is super important. And I work a lot, and I've for many years I've worked a lot with a wonderful holistic chef called Hayley North, and she talks about setting the table quite a lot. That ritual of setting the table and putting maybe some nice flowers out, even if, especially if it's just you eating, actually, and making it a, a nice little ritual, a nice little place to sit that you feel good in, that makes you smile.
Yeah, using nice plates, using nice cutlery, arranging the food nicely on the plate makes a difference, I think. With metabolic balance, we love an apple. And I always actually really like to chop my apple up. And I have specific bowls that I just love that are just pretty. And I like to have my apple, and then I could have eat it, it almost a little bit like sweets, that you're just in, it's a treat. And we know sweets aren't a treat, but it's that almost going back to that feeling of, I've prepared my apple for myself and now I'm really enjoying it. And so having that mindful, I suppose I hadn't fully really thought of mindful eating fully into that true meditative place that you're sort of suggesting we can go.
Yeah, and it's a double whammy really, in terms of, most health conditions are stress related, stress triggered, stress driven in one way or another. Stress has the biggest impact on, or one of the biggest impacts on, our immune systems, on things like histamine release for kind of allergies and food sensitivities and other kinds of histamine issues. It just plays a massive role in how our fundamental physiology works. It has an impact on blood sugar and cortisol levels and all sorts of things. So if we can regulate stress better, then that's a real fundamental cornerstone in keeping healthy. And one of the ways that we can do that is with mindfulness. So if we can instill that as part of our mealtime ritual, then that's a really wonderful thing to do. And then it just gets better because of that playful curiosity with which we're tasting and experiencing the food. What then happens is we're giving our bodies more information about what's coming, so it can hopefully digest it better. And if it's digesting the food better, then we'll absorb more nutrients. We'll have fewer undigested foods to contend with. So potentially, hopefully, less inflammation, a much more beneficial experience for the gut microbiome, which is also disturbed a lot by stress as well as poor digestion. And the gut microbiome is the front line of our immune system. So that's really important too. So we've got all of those health benefits going on in terms of digestion. But we're also setting up a little bit of a feedback in terms of we're now fully experiencing our senses with as fully into our body as we can be at this moment. Stress disconnects us from our feeling bodies, and when we do this, we come back in so we can feel what's going on in our bodies more. This is why it can be difficult for some people with PTSD, because actually it doesn't feel safe to be in our bodies yet. But this is a practice for most people to go, come on, come in. It's safe enough here to feel what's going on, and it's nice to feel what's going on. And then we can get some magical feedback from our bodies that we actually learn to listen to. So we get told all the time, listen to your body, listen to its messages. And most people are like, what? What does that even mean? And this is actually where we can start to do this, because when we are fully experiencing that moment of eating and how it feels, we then can get a sense sometimes of, hmm, maybe that's enough now, or maybe we need something more, or oh, this feels really nourishing. This is lovely, or hmm, not I'm not feeling this right now. And it's that so it's no like big conversations and voices in your head. It's as simple as when you might go to eat a salad on a really cold day and your body's instinctively going, it's and your head's going, oh, but it's salad, it's really good. But your body's going, I'm a bit cold, bit cold for salad. It's that kind of sense, that kind of intuitive feeling. And the more we practice being kind of really conscious of what's going on as we're eating, the more we'll hear those kinds of messages.
Yeah. And I think, well, I remember I was reading a study quite a few years ago now, but also the mindlessness of eating foods that just aren't even that good food. So a lot of people have this they'll eat stale popcorn just because it's in front of them. That was what this study was actually showing. This particular study I'm remembering is a researchers putting buckets of a week-old popcorn, so completely stale popcorn, in front of people in cinemas, and because they are literally sat there, they are eating this completely stale, horrible tasting food that without noticing it particularly. And I think that's one of the things that I find, that when we can bring people to be really aware of what they're eating, how it's making them feel, how the taste really is, and the quality coming back, we can then, have such strong, results on bringing people into a better place for the long term with choosing the right foods.
That's so true, because I mean, even now, every is I'll have, because no foods are really off the table in my world. There are certain foods that I might just never go for. I might be in situations where that's all that's on offer, and I'll go to eat it and just think, I just really can't face this right now. But most foods, you go to. I had a craving recently for a particular type of chocolate bar that I don't need to name, but it was a particular type of chocolate bar that I hadn't had in years. But when I was a child, I used to live on these for a while, for a good couple of years. That's probably all I really ate. And it was like, and it was this craving came out of the blue, and it was really intriguing. And I thought, I'm not going to overanalyze this. So there's probably, kind of emotional reasons and other reasons why I'm craving this right now. I'm not going to overanalyze it. I'm just going to go and buy one and just really enjoy it. And I did. And every mouthful of that, I thought, okay, I'm just going to really, you know, really feel what this tastes like and the experience of it. And the whole bar felt completely nourishing and amazing, and really did. It just was just what I needed at that time for whatever reason.
Nourishing reason. Yeah.
Exactly. But because I'd had one, then a week later my body was going, "Oh, quite fancy another one of those again." So I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So I went and bought one, and I had a mouthful, and I ate it mindfully, and my body went, no, not now. You don't this isn't actually doing anything for you." So that's a really good example of how when we crave things, there will be different reasons for those cravings at different times. And some of them, sometimes we just have to go with it and trust what's going on, and eating mindfully will give us some clues as to whether that is a nourishing thing to do at that moment. But more often than not, there are other things going on. It's habit, it's a sweet tooth, it's a blood sugar drop, it's a dysbiosis issue, it's a metabolic issue of some kind. There's usually other things going on, and to try and figure that out. And for me in that moment, I was like, okay, what is really going on here? It's almost exactly the same time of day that I had this last time. My body's thinking, oh, is this a new habit? I remembered this one from days gone by. Can we get back into it really quickly? I'd probably also, I think that day I'd not had as much protein for breakfast as I normally do. So my blood sugar was probably a little bit more compromised than usual. There were a few things that I was like, okay, I can avoid this situation in future. I can avoid this craving coming back quite simply without needing willpower, but just by understanding what's going on there.
Yeah, and I think it's there's a couple of things I would say when coming here with that. It's so important to know that there's nothing off the table. That if you really feel a strong urge that this is what you want to eat, I really believe that we have to kind of test it out. We have to eat it mindfully and make a truly informed choice, whether you carry on or not, whether you actually take that informed choice of saying, yeah, actually, it's not quite what I needed. I think if you really have strong taboo, kind of, you're not allowed that. It almost makes the desire stronger. We almost kind of want to rebel against it. I mean, with MB, we have a food list that we advise people to follow during the change period. But I'm often really trying to coach, can we focus on this right now? But you can have anything you want if you really choose to have it. But if you want change, then we really need to focus and bring in these foods for the anti-inflammatory approach. Would you, just coming into because the other thing that keeps on coming to mind is intuitive eating. Because it's quite different, intuitive eating to mindful eating. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, and of course there are crossovers between the two. There's a huge area that it has in common about kind of taking the judgment out, listening to the body, paying attention to what trusting your body to make decisions and to know what's best for you. But I think what often, is that how do we really know? And making those informed decisions takes a huge amount of dedication and practice and commitment and time. For a lot of the time when you're eating mindfully, there won't be any messages coming back from your body, actually. It's especially to begin with.
Well, there'll be lots of them, but you won't really be able to interpret them. You won't really know where they're coming from and what's real and what's just an advert you saw on the bus coming home or something. That's
exactly. Have you ever seen that Sugar film, which is an Australian film? Oh, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it came out years ago and it was just brilliant. And he put himself in a brain MRI and they showed him pictures of milkshakes and his brain lit up just seeing the picture of the milkshake. And then they fed him the milkshake and his brain lit up even more. But yeah, it's those pictures of things can be really powerful. So yeah, it's really confusing and marketing is set up to trick our brains. And as long as we spend a lot of time stuck in our heads and trying to figure things out logically and rationally and settling into our bodies to get the kind of their take or the take of different aspects of our body. I mean, our brain's still a part of our body, but to really settle in and feel our way through it all, it's a very difficult thing to do when we're being distracted and blinded so much all of the time. So intuitive eating combined with mindfulness could potentially be a really powerful thing because mindful eating could really help develop the skills that would make intuitive eating really meaningful. And I'm sure that a lot of people practice it in that way. But I've also seen a lot of people talking about intuitive eating in a way that they're really just giving themselves permission to eat everything and anything. And that's a lovely step to stop judgment, but it's a stepping stone, not the whole kind of long-term thing. It's part of the process. So I think we need to kind of just keep checking in and keep auditing and assessing what's going on with our relationships with food? And are we stuck in an interim step, or are we actually moving through to a place where we actually feel fully nourished and we know what that means and we know how that feels?
I mean, intuitive eating for me, I've always felt it, we can only really go for genuine intuitive eating if we are coming from a place of balance and, whole body health, where all of the processes really are going to intuitively tell you actually really what you genuinely need. And it's not just an abnormal gut microbiome that's intuitively telling you to eat more sugar, for example, or it's a bit of stress, or it's, like I say, some adverse subliminal message that you happen to have picked up 20 minutes before that you didn't even particularly notice because it's, subliminal. And that's what's now driving you to phone for a fast food takeout. Because you could say, well, that's intuitive eating. I've popped in my head, I've decided I need to have that fast food, high fat, trans fat, processed foods because I'm intuitively giving my body what I need. But you're coming from a place of pretty significant imbalance with that thought process.
Yeah, it's that awareness and complete honesty with ourselves about what we're being driven by, where we're actually at with our relationship with our bodies and our relationship with our food. And our relationship with food really is an extension or just intrinsically part of our relationship with our bodies. So if we have a difficult relationship with our own body, that is going to lead to a difficult relationship with food and vice versa. It's a long process. I remember when I was originally training, my teacher suggesting or throwing the question out there, do we all have some kind of disordered eating actually? And I think the answer is probably yes. We probably could all spend some more time actually evaluating our relationships with food and our relationships with not just what we're eating, but how we're eating, when we're eating, what energy we're eating with. Even if it's just that most people are just eating too quickly because they're just really feeling the pressure of I only got 5 minutes to eat this before I get on to the next thing, before I have to do this, before I have to do that. And then that's I mean, I have kind of worked with people where it's difficult for them to change that. So we then talk about how they can actually use that 5 minutes mindfully and just pause and imagine that bubble of calm and imagine that in that bubble of calm, there is no time. Time stretches out for eternity. And then using that 5 minutes to just really center and focus. So if you kind of get really good at that, it takes some practice, but if you get really good at that, then you can access that really quickly. So those moments where you are under real time pressure, you can still just go, right, here, now, breathe, relax, center, eat, chew. Chew it. This is when chewing happens. Most people don't chew, right?
No, they just swallow. Yeah. Shove it in and swallow. Yeah.
Even if that just happens I took a lot about 3 mindful mouthfuls because
Yes. I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah.
yeah, there's no particular science behind the number 3. I mean, it's a great number, and it seems to me from experience, it seems to be a manageable amount of mouthfuls for most people to actually stop and pause and pay attention and experience and be curious and chew and all of those things. Even when time is really rushed, or if they're in a social situation or they're sat round the family dinner table, you can do that for 3 mouthfuls and then get on. And that will have been meaningful enough to kind of set the kind of set your direction for what that meal is going to be like. And how you're going to digest it and to bring yourself back into that place of being centered and settled and calm. So that just seems to work. For some people, it might just start off with 1 mindful mouthful. I try and have 3 at the start and then check in every now and again with a little mindful mouthful here and there. That helps me to kind of acknowledge, acknowledge whether I'm on track, whether I've had enough now, whether, what's going on. So it's flexible, but it's a good starting point, that aiming for 3 mindful mouthfuls. So if you are, really busy and you're rushing around trying to get the kids to school, or you've got like 5 minutes between one meeting and the next minute, you can do 3 mindful mouthfuls and then still have a few minutes to wolf the rest down if you need to, or just, or just acknowledge, actually, these 3 mindful mouthfuls were enough to keep me going for now. I've got loads out of them, actually. I've got more out of them than if I'd have just wolfed down the whole meal.
I think, one of the things that I always find with the metabolic balance programs, we're bringing people into being very, having a much more focused understanding of how their food is making them feel. So it's actually coming back to that food as nourishment and taking the time to properly nourish yourself for those 3 meals a day. And what I'm hearing as well from is really slowing it down. Then in those 3 meals, again, a little bit more of taking those 3 first mouthfuls. You can have an even greater awareness. And I'm also really picking up about how much of a long-term journey this is, of practicing, getting better, noticing, learning a little bit different, adapting maybe how you do something. As in, this isn't something you're just going to learn in 3 days or doing, and then that's it.
Absolutely. I remember a friend of mine telling me that she heard the Dalai Lama speak in the healing fields at Glastonbury one year, and he said, he was talking about mindfulness meditation and the whole concept of letting the thoughts calm and watching them disappear again, and how it's not about emptying your brain, because your brain will naturally have thoughts. And he said that he still struggles hugely with those distracting thoughts when he meditates. This is the Dalai Lama. And that immediately takes a huge amount of stress and pressure off everyone else.
Yeah, you don't have to do this straight away, but actually you just have to kind of I often think you have to just sort of reel your brain back in. It'll drift off, and then you reel it in a little bit again, and then it might drift off again, but yeah, no, come back, come back, come back. Let's, like a distracted child. Yeah.
And it's a practice. The clue's in the name. You have to practice it. And I've been doing this for so many years now, and I don't always get these kind of amazing clear messages of what I should be eating right now or how this feels. It's still a daily practice that I'm still working on all of the time.
Yeah, and I think that's what we are really trying to get people to sort of fall in love a little bit of taking care of themselves, putting themselves as actually an important part of their day. Their self-care, which self-care in this context is nourishing your body and actually noticing what the nourishment is that's going in. And I had I'll share with this. I was chatting to a client today, and was saying how he is looking at food in a different way. It's almost a bit like it has to audition for him. Is it worthy of actually going in my body? As in, he's stopping and looking at what might be presented to him or what might be on offer, and he's going, "Is this what I want?" All he's doing is slowing it down and not immediately diving in, which is mindful eating, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. That whole process of just slowing down and that takes pressure off, which is great, because when we have all of this pressure to eat perfectly, to be good, to, all of these kind of judgment things, it backs us into this tight little corner where we're in that stressful state where we can't feel or hear anything anymore. And for this reason, I also often talk about how nutrition is a broad pathway, not a narrow tightrope. So we have plenty of wiggle room for starts, and we can breathe on that broad pathway. There may be times where we feel a bit close to the edge, so we want to come back to the center again. And there may be times where we choose to narrow the pathway a little bit, but for a limited time and for a specific goal that feels nourishing. But it's never a narrow tightrope because so many people eat or don't eat out of fear. Their meal times and their food choices are driven by fear, especially people with chronic health problems. There's this sense of, oh, I shouldn't eat that. Like, if I eat that, it might make me worse. I mean, I work with a lot of people with and recovering from cancer, and I see that a lot in that area. So it's, they read everywhere, well, this will feed your cancer, this will feed your cancer. But it's the same with people without cancer as well. It's like, oh, this is bad. This will make me ill. And eating becomes fear driven rather than driven by that sense of self-care, self-love, self-nourishment. It's a world of difference.
And it is that understanding of when you lean into certain things and when you do broaden out. I talk exactly the same way about that broad pathway. We often say that, when we really want change, then you're going to be more in the middle of the road. You're going to be a little bit more focused because you want to kind of maybe move things. But actually, the vast majority of the time, you also want to weave and enjoy life's experiences and just know where you're kind of maybe not going to go, but also where you think, yeah, I can have a little bit of that just on occasion. You won't be damaging and that kind of thing. You're actually really in tune with what will cause that inflammatory approach in the body. Because, yeah, that's one of the things. Food is essentially I want to say trillions, but probably I don't know trillions, but it's messengers to the body. All of those nutrients are essentially little mini messengers that go in and make our bodies work in the way that they do or they don't or whatever.
Yeah. And if you've got too many messages going in all at once, you're not going to be able to hear them clearly. And there are some that are going to be just shouting really loudly. Yeah.
or the body respond.
The more we can kind of get to know our own bodies as well through being mindful and that whole kind of mindful relationship with our bodies and our food, the more we can also get a sense of when we're close to the edge of that path as well, and when something is going to push us over the edge or whether we've got more wiggle room. So we can take responsibility for that more.
If somebody is just starting on this on any kind of health change, what would you say is the first bit of advice to somebody who's just saying, I'm just starting here and I'm intrigued by this, but it sounds a little bit hard or a bit too, I'm going to forget, whatever.
Yeah. So take it at your own pace, at your own rhythm. As long as that's kind of moving forward and not completely stagnant, because if your own pace seems to get stuck, then we need to figure that out. But yeah, it's about figuring out how to make this work with your lifestyle. And are there things that actually you can shift in your lifestyle to make this easier? Where is that wiggle room? Where can we make small changes that make really meaningful differences, or small changes that open up big spaces?
Yeah. If we are thinking about, we're going into Christmas here, we've got the holiday season coming up. And I think this is where a lot of this pressure that people have to be part of what's going on with the party or what everyone else is eating around them. And, with metabolic balance, we always want to have the balance. So we want people to always be able to enjoy it. But I spend a lot of time trying to help people say, you don't have to just do what everyone else is doing. You can actually stop and make the choice and just slow things down. How do you approach that kind of thing?
Yeah, really similar. And also just focusing, the things that seem to be most helpful for people is getting that blood sugar balance right, because then it's much easier. It's much easier to be mindful and settled in your body and centered and grounded and focused when blood sugar is stable. When blood sugar drops, then we really wobble out, and it's really hard to find that place of stability again. So if we're keeping blood sugar as stable as possible most of the time, then it's easier to make more grounded decisions at meal times, and it's easier to listen to when our bodies are saying, oh, that's enough now. But when we savor something really delicious, like that chocolate bar I had the other week, or, the Christmas pudding or the mince pies or whatever it is, the chocolates that come out, the alcohol even that comes out, when we really savor it, there'll be a point where our bodies will say, do you know what, I've gotten all the joy that I need from that. The joy, the satisfaction, the sense of community, the sense of sharing, all of the positive things that we get from those kind of like festive foods. It's not a case of denying ourselves that. It's a case of being aware when we've been satisfied. We've got that. We've got it now. We don't need to carry on having more. And we've all, how many times have we all had that experience of, oh, I've gone too far.
It's because you didn't check in. It's like that's realizing, two mince pies. Actually, I've thoroughly enjoyed that. The third and the fourth, now I'm feeling a bit sick. Yeah. So, but if you stop,
And is that really what you want?
exactly, you do want to enjoy the rituals of the celebration, but you want to enjoy it on so it doesn't damage you. That's the bit that I always come back to. That we want to stand up from the dinner table and actually be able to play with the kids and their new toys, or take part in the party games after lunch, or whatever it might be that is happening. So, yeah, and enjoy and potentially enjoy the conversations much better, because like Christmas is stressful though, isn't it? I mean, that's the other thing. So coming back to even how we started, where you were really pointing out the impact of stress. That stress at party gatherings and family gatherings is very real and can be very, very damaging to the digestive system. And just taking this mindful approach means that you're just doing that little bit extra just to help you digest that food and enjoy it even that little bit more.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because often our default, what our learnt behavior to deal with stress is to eat more, drink more. That's for many of us, that's our learnt behavior. Or for some people, it might be the opposite. It might be to just the digestion will just completely shut down and appetite will switch off completely. But for a lot of people, it's the classic comfort eating, stress eating picture. So, and when we are in those kinds of situations, especially around family, when I don't know about you, but I tend to sometimes, if I'm stressed around family, I was like, I'm a 7-year-old little girl again. I go back into all of those default behaviors. And that's really strong. It's a really strong pattern that's built into us. So we have to in order to bring in this new pattern of dealing with this calmly and in a centered, grounded, mindful way, we have to spend a lot of time practicing that. So, as you said at the earlier on, just spending 3 days learning how to eat mindfully and do 3 mindful mouthfuls isn't necessarily gonna get you through a stressful Christmas this year. But the more you do it, it might help a little bit, and the more you do it future Christmases, you might find yourself more in that space where actually this is a different experience now.
I could carry on talking to you, you know, all day, but I think it's so important to bring the mindfulness, bring that awareness about how we're eating, when we're eating, why we're eating, bring that nourishment to the body. I mean, MB, we're a nutritional program that really, teaches people what to eat, but it's a lifelong journey of then connecting in and realizing, what do we know? Where do we nourish ourselves? How are we going to nourish ourselves? How are we going to, take those moments in the day that really are for us, and not just blindly sort of go with everyone to a beat of everyone else's drum. We come back to, what do we need? What does my body need? And I think meals are great way of having those meditative moments. That's what I think I've learned really from you today.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and I think we're on the same page with a lot of things, and it looks like it's going to always be a delight to chat with you, because I learnt so much from you, and it was just really lovely when you came onto the ICANN podcast as well. So
Yeah, well, we definitely need to catch up again, and we will, because I actually have lots more questions that I haven't really had a chance to ask you. So we're going to have to do this again, and then we will we'll go through more. So yeah, thank you so much, Kirsten. It's been so wonderful that you've shared your insights with us today, and I think it's such a timely moment for anybody, if you are feeling a bit fraught with the holiday season, or just with being busy, feeling you can't take that moment. Just 3 mindful mouthfuls, as Kirsten says, is all that it can actually take. Just slow down, chew, look. I often say we need to look at our food, don't we? So looking, selecting properly, and putting it carefully into our mouths and experiencing it. Yeah, and then you say, you need to bolt it down afterwards.
get on with your meal. Enjoy the social occasion of it all.
Yeah, we don't need to go too much, but actually just taking that first 3 mouthfuls could make a massive difference. So if you want to check out more from Kirsten, we'll have links in the show notes, and yeah, we're going to get Kirsten back as well to learn a bit more. But thank you again. It's been a pleasure. And if anybody would like to know more about metabolic balance as well, of course, do check out the website and find your practitioner. Now is the perfect time to be potentially checking out your MB practitioner to really bring in the new year and the new you, and start this mindful journey of how food nourishes us. So thank you, and we will catch up again soon.
Thanks, Cherry.